Hello and welcome to Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast that gives you everything you need to know about the day to come on the election trail.
My name is Jack Blanchard of Politico. With me as always is Sam Coates of Sky News. It is Wednesday morning and we are 2 weeks into this election campaign and there are 29 days to go until polling day.
I'm speaking to you from Salford, where, as everybody who's listening, I'm sure is aware, there was the scrappy TV head-to-head debate between Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak in the studios, ITV studios just down the road. Jack, what are the three things we're concentrating on today?
Well, it is very much the morning after the night before, Sam, and I think we need to start by majoring on the fallout from that TV debate. We'll be picking through what happened, not least because there's not going to be a great deal of campaigning today because it is the start of 2 days of remembrance of the D-Day. It's the 80th anniversary and the political leaders will be off doing that rather than being on the campaign trail today. And we'll also be talking about Wales because there is a vote of no confidence happening today and the new Welsh First Minister, so we'll be getting into that as well. But why don't you kick things off, Sam? You were lucky enough to be up in Salford. I wasn't. I say lucky with a sort of slight twinge in my throat, but you tell me, how good was it?
Well, we all travelled up to Salford to watch this debate, needless to say, on TV screens in a airless room at the top of ITV studios. And when you pick through the polling that was done immediately after the debate, the number one thing that comes across from the public is their sense of frustration at what they watched. As kind of for 1 hour and 4 minutes, the two men battled. It was a little bit like they'd spent 2 weeks attacking each other at a distance, and finally they were together in the same cage and could go at each other. And they sort of tore lumps and talked over and sort of gouged at each other all the way through. It was a bit of an uncomfortable watch, and that was the view actually of both the parties, and that was partly the format. It was partly how the men approached it. But that doesn't mean that we didn't learn something about what was going on. We didn't see a bit of Keir Starmer up close under pressure. We saw what Rishi Sunak looks like when he's trying to fight back.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rishi Sunak will probably be the happier of the two this morning. It didn't go badly for him. He came with this pre-prepared line about Labour putting your taxes up by £2,000, and he landed it repeatedly, and really weirdly, Keir Starmer was just letting him say it without deciding to rebut it for at least the first half of the show. And I think that sort of flat-footedness that Starmer showed there will have worried Labour a lot. You know, you need to come out and hit back very hard when someone's making that kind of assertion. I mean, it's far from clear that that assertion is in any way true. But as we know in modern political campaigning, people like to campaign in primary colours. They like these big headline-grabbing statements that may or may not have basis in fact, and it's very important to come out very hard against them. And Starmer didn't do that. And you know, for someone who's such an experienced public speaker, barrister, you would have expected him to do better, and you could sense the frustration within the Labour Party that he was so slow to come back on that. And I think that will cost him, really. You know, the tax line is one Labour's been desperate to avoid getting trapped by. They've matched the Tories on tax time and time again over the past few months, and yet here they are a few weeks out from polling day being hammered on it anyway.
That's right. There have been lots and lots of big black hole figures in the first couple of weeks of this campaign. And to be honest, both parties have thrown accusations at the other side of unfunded promises and could end up putting up taxes. But the particular one that Rishi Sunak used 13 times in last night's debate, which I have to say is probably the most memorable thing to take away from last night's debate, didn't seem to be greeted with an easy response. Keir Starmer initially started, as you say, by simply sidestepping the issue. In the spin room afterwards, there was some frustration amongst his team that he didn't really come back harder on that. One of them just said he should have called it out as a lie. Keir Starmer did call it garbage. I'm not sure the difference between lie and garbage is it was going to make the difference. The problem is that Keir Starmer couldn't explain why it was wrong beyond saying, well, this is in order to get to this figure, it's an amalgamation of things that the Tories claim we're going to do that we're not. Some of the policies that they have added up to get to a black hole that would result in that level of tax increases, we are simply not planning to do. But I think they're going to have to spend some time on this because I think they know that they have opened up a bit of a flank.
It reminded me of the whole £350 million a week on the side of the bus thing, where you sort of concoct a figure that is sort of kind of has some vague semblance of truth and then sort of isn't really actually true at all at the same time, and you just shout it repeatedly. And I wonder if Keir Starmer's initial thought was, I don't want to engage with this, because there was thinking that the amount of time the Remain camp spent engaging with that actually ended up fighting the war on Leave's turf. And I wonder if he just didn't want to be talking about tax, and that's why he wasn't engaging with it. But I'm afraid, from his point of view, what came across, as you say, was someone who was just avoiding the issue, and it allowed Rishi Sunak to land this blow, rightly or wrongly. However, I don't want to give the impression that that was the only thing that happened in this debate. Sunak had some pretty bad moments, didn't he? Not least when he got laughed at by the audience over the flagship policy on national service that he announced at the start of this campaign. That is a terrible look for a prime minister. It was cringe to watch that happen to him. And it wasn't the only bad moment as well for him. I mean, it was pretty even, but I just think that, as you say, the tax thing is the thing that people will remember and the thing that Labour will be upset about this morning.
If I was in Labour, I would worry actually it played into a slightly bigger theme, the tax issue, which was one of Keir Starmer and vagueness. The other area that I thought Rishi Sunak did well on was to press home on the doctors' strike. Now, Rishi Sunak was on the back foot over the question of the scale of waiting lists. And at one point, he did actually claim that waiting lists were coming down, and Keir Starmer jumped in and pointed out that they'd gone up from 7.2 million to 7.5 million in his premiership. But then Sunak came back and said, well, that's because of industrial action. What would you do with the junior doctors striking? And Keir Starmer's answer to that is simply get in a room and negotiate. And Labour seem to think that that's a plan, but I think quite a lot of people listening might query that. Just saying that you are the grown-ups in a debate is not necessarily an answer. You also had him sidestepping the question that was just a Tory trap, which is what would you do about pensioners that will end up paying more tax? You'll remember, of course, that Rishi Sunak has now committed to this triple lock plus, which raises just for pensioners the threshold before you have to pay tax in order to protect the basic state pension from being caught by it. And again, Keir Starmer was sidestepping. Is it falling into a Tory trap, or is it refusing to engage in a way that ensures the voters don't notice? It's this issue of clarity that's always been one of the criticisms of Keir Starmer, and I'm not sure last night massively helped.
Yeah, and you're totally right. Starmer did also land his key blows, and they were all about the Tories' record in government. It was very striking to me that Keir Starmer mentioned Liz Truss about 3 times in the first 10 seconds. A very, very easy attack lane for Labour that, Sunak struggles to rebut because he didn't come out hard enough against Liz Truss in the first month of his premiership, in my opinion, and that has left him open to these attacks, and they do hit home. Similarly, the pledges he made when he came in as Prime Minister, we all know he's failed miserably on most of them, and Starmer was able to hammer that point as well, not most effectively, I thought, on NHS waiting lists, where he was openly mocking the Prime Minister's claim they were coming down, and you could see the audience were agreeing with Starmer and again laughing at Rishi Sunak, and that is always a bad place for a politician to be, getting laughed at. I thought the snap polling was interesting that YouGov did for you guys. Sam, do you want to just talk us through that immediately after the debate?
So the headline was that YouGov asked who came out best, and Rishi Sunak won, but only 51 to Keir Starmer's 49. So really, in fairness, that's even Stevens. That's all within the margin of error. Is that enough compared to where the opinion polls are to represent a win for Rishi Sunak? Well, it means he beats expectations. Right, I think Rishi Sunak has had has struggled so much on this campaign so far that they, as you say, the Tories will be pleased with that. Is it enough to make a big difference? Well, after the debate, Patrick English, who did the polling for YouGov, who'd been digging down deep into the numbers, sent us this voice note.
So proportionally, not very many people watch these debates, but there was a really interesting finding that we pulled out. So when we ask people traditionally who would make the best Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak trails Keir Starmer by quite some significant margin. However, among the debate watchers last night, Sunak actually won on who came out as most prime ministerial. And that's really important, because if that starts to seep through into the wider public perceptions about who would make the best prime minister, that's a significant change. And that could then in turn impact vote intention and in turn impact the Conservatives' prospects for the election going forward.
So that's one thing that Patrick English from YouGov thinks might have an impact on the debate. But I think, moreover, Tories, people who voted Tory in 2019, by an overwhelming margin, thought that Rishi Sunak was the winner, which, given the polling, which shows that 2019 Tories are not necessarily going to vote again for the party, or at least half of them say that they aren't at the moment, I think will also be a win. That's the key demographic that Conservative headquarters are trying to reunite that has fractured. So I think they're quite chipper. The Tory spin doctors in the spin room were just wandering around going tax, 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 while some of the Labour ones were a little bit more phlegmatic. Interestingly, Keir Starmer actually prepares for this by going into a hotel room, shutting himself alone, and spending some time without anybody around him. That's what he did yesterday afternoon in order to prepare. Apparently, quite likes just some me time all alone, and he does this before Prime Minister's questions as well, without that kind of cacophony of voices around him. Maybe he'll have a few more voices around him next time to give him a few more lines to deal with the kind of Rishi attacks that we saw.
The big question this morning, Sam, is how much does any of this matter? I was slightly struck by someone noting that in the 2019 head-to-head leaders debate produced exactly the same result in an instant snap poll, that Boris Johnson won on 51% and Jeremy Corbyn won on 49%. So basically neck and neck. And look how that election turned out. You know, these things feel very important in the moment. They don't necessarily have an enormous impact on how many people vote. However, I do think that there is some cause for Tory cheer today. Like, they urgently needed some sort of shot in the arm last night, given the absolutely appalling week that the Tory campaign has had so far. And they got a bit of that. And you can see that in the Tory press this morning. The right-leaning papers all being pretty happy with how Rishi Sunak performed. Some of the papers looked like they were about to defect to Reform yesterday. Well, they're very much, backing Rishi Sunak in his performance this morning, and that will at least give Tory candidates something positive to think about. And this tax attack line is clearly now going to be a big feature of the campaign, and that at least gives them something to say, something to cling on to, something to shout at as they sort of peer into the abyss with each terrible poll. And there was another terrible MRP poll for the Tories last night, we should say, a third in 2 days, all making it look like they're very much on the verge of defeat. Still, there are several weeks to go and anything can happen.
One of the weird things about the debate is that it now basically leaves us in the memory of that debate sort of bleeds into a political vacuum, because the D-Day celebrations mean that there is effectively a pause in campaigning completely. We are this month marking the 80th anniversary of D-Day, which was when tens of thousands of troops landed on the beaches of Normandy, marking the start of the Allied campaign to liberate Nazi-occupied Northern Europe. And there are ceremonies led by the King and Queen in Portsmouth, but attended by the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, the Defence Secretary, and Keir Starmer and David Lammy, and Ed Davey, and Nigel Farage. So while the two principal contenders for Downing Street met sort of almost in anger on Tuesday night, they sort of meet in remembrance today. But that means that the reverberations from the debate will continue to echo, because in the political sphere at least, everyone has paused in order to remember the veterans for whom this it will be one of the last times that they gather.
Yeah, that's right, and those commemorations are going on into Thursday as well. So this will be a sort of two-day semi-pause. Even Nigel Farage is heading to France for a couple of days to pay his respects. But it's not true to say that campaigning is stopping completely, Sam. There will still be lots of other politicians on the airwaves all through the day arguing about how those TV debates went. We've got Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner certainly out and about. Keir Starmer is doing some clips with a World War II veteran, and Labour are announcing some policies around army veterans to mark the D-Day anniversary. So, the campaigning will sort of go on at half pace today, but I do think the fallout from the debates will mainly dominate that. Let's just talk quickly about Wales as well, Sam. This is very much not a general election story, but it is a very important one. Just tell us what's happening in Wales this afternoon.
Vaughan Gething, who has been Welsh First Minister since, check notes, March, is already facing a vote of motion of no confidence in the Welsh Parliament, tabled by the Welsh Conservatives. Now, there's been a series of rows about Vaughan Gething, about his acceptance of a donation during the leadership campaign, and the sacking of a minister over leaking of text messages. And so he's already facing a challenge to authority. He needs the backing from all 30 members, Labour members of the Welsh Assembly, in order to cling on to his job. We will find out at 6:10 tonight whether he's done it.
Yeah, the balance is exactly 30-30 in the Senate, and it's not exactly clear that every Labour politician is in a position to turn out. The Tories are saying they won't be granting any pairs or anything like that, according to my excellent Playbook colleague Dan Bloom. So it isn't 100% sure that Vaughan Gething is going to win this vote. He was very quick to say yesterday that the vote is not a binding one, which sounds very much like a man who is not certain he's going to win. So do take yourselves away from the election campaign if you can this evening, just to see some political drama in Wales. I mean, this coming so quickly after what happened in Scotland, Sam, certainly makes the politics of our other nations a little more exciting than we're used to.
Certainly, things up for grabs in three nations in the United Kingdom. It's quite something. Anyway, I will be heading back to London today, having spent all evening in that rather dingy, musty spin room. So I look forward to joining you tomorrow there.
How much sleep did you actually get, Sam? You look a little tired on the Zoom.
I think we finished work and got to the hotel room around about 1. So plenty, I think, is the answer.
Plenty. Very good. There you go. Sam Coates staying up all night just for you lot to enjoy this podcast. We will see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much for joining us. Cheers.